I just wanted to say what an amazing gathering this is and what a thrill it is to be a part of it. And, I think that, we love gatherings like this, don't we? Because we pride ourselves as being thinking, rational beings. In fact, we even gave ourselves the name Homo sapiens, which means the wise human. Of all the species, that share this planet with us, we're the ones with the really big brains. But what do we really use these big brains for, primarily? And are we really a rational species? And more to the point that I would like to address as a filmmaker, if you're interested in making a difference, is a rational approach the best way to appeal to us, to change minds, or to get an idea across? Let me just start out with asking you to make a choice. Let's say I take two different types of species, a shark and a human being. Okay, now I'll ask you, which one is the biggest threat to the other? Which one is basically the most dangerous? Let's just start. Now, I know I'm talking to Maui, so some of you are probably ahead of me on this. But let's start with the rational approach. On average, every year worldwide, sharks kill about 4 people a year. On average, worldwide, people kill, it's estimated, 70 million sharks a year. So that's a pretty dramatic comparison, even if you're not a statistical expert, I think, right? Sharks are disappearing at a dramatic rate, at an unprecedented rate. We're killing them for their fins and all sorts of other reasons. 1/3 of shark populations worldwide are in danger of becoming extinct. Just in the United States alone, shark populations have dropped by 50 to 90%. And if this keeps going, it's going to be a disaster for the ecology of our oceans because we're going to lose the top predator. Now, let's look at a little bit more of the emotional side. Probably the animal or the species that we fear the most is the great white shark, and it's a big, big, impressive predator. It weighs, 2 to 4 tons, and it can be 18 feet long. The way in the past we filmed this predator is often from the perceived safety of a shark cage. Now, I say perceived because this animal is perfectly capable of going right through the bars and getting at you, but they don't. They're just not interested. In fact, to get our images, we have to entice them to come close to the cage with tuna or some kind of bait. Otherwise, they won't even come near it. And in that way, over the years, with a camera shoved in the mouth, we get these iconic images that you've been bombarded with, like this, over and over and over on so many different channels and movies. It's a scary-looking mouth. I mean, look at those teeth. This is an animal, with a mouth like that with a real public relations problem. And when I refer to you as you, I really mean the proverbial you. I'm talking about the audience at large, because I know that you're a little more enlightened, being here at TED and being from Maui. But when my talk is over, I'm going to bet that this image is probably going to stick with you or the average person much longer than any of the statistics that I could give you about sharks. It's just that the emotional impact of the image, the facts cannot compete with it. Now, the question is, I'm not really here to talk just about sharks. I'm here to talk about the power of emotionality from a filmmaking point of view. And we tend to think of ourselves as logical creatures, but actually we're hardwired a different way. The shark, of course, we're afraid of this animal, and fear is one of the most powerful emotions of all. And there's a section in our brain called the limbic system, a loose collection of neurons, which we call the limbic system, and it's responsible for emotional reaction. Not just fear, but whenever we laugh, or whenever we cry, or whenever we feel affection for one another, it's the limbic system taking charge, and it can and usually does override the cortex, the more thoughtful areas of the brain. So, given this, big question is, how can we how can we override our impressions and our mythology and our irrational fears about an animal which desperately needs our help? I started out at University of Hawaii studying marine biology, and I fell in love with filmmaking. I was using a video camera to study the behavior of reef fish, and I just got bitten by the filmmaking bug. I started using the department's camera to film things I wasn't supposed to film, and I just became, I've just fell in love with the whole process of taking a movie camera and filming images and cutting those together and witnessing the effect that it would have on an audience when I was telling stories. My wife, Gracie, and I, we got started in natural history and environmental films. And there was an overriding lesson that we had to learn, and we're still learning it, and that is that if you want to change things, if you want to make a difference somehow, that you need to appeal to the heart versus the mind, that emotions are far more powerful than any factual argument. But if you want to reach the mind, you do it through the heart. You do it through the limbic system. This was really hard for someone with a training in science to accept, and sometimes it still is. In fact, when I was practicing this talk, I gave it to Gracie, and she said, "It's not bad, but too much mind and not enough heart." And so you see, I'm still learning. And one of the things I'm learning is that we are primarily a storytelling species rather than a rational one. And emotionally charged stories, the ones that really affect us, get handed down over generations, and they become a part of our culture. They become incorporated into our mythology. They become myths. And they become myths which govern our value systems and our actions. And some of those myths, especially ones that I want to address today, because I have experience as a filmmaker with 3 big myths that I want to address today. Some of them may not be very healthy for the natural world or the planet. Hawaii is a beautiful place. We live in an amazing, amazing place. And with the swaying coconut palms and the beaches, it's the quintessential picture of paradise. But look a little deeper, and well, let me start telling you a story. The origin of Hawaii. Hawaii was born of fire, as many of you know. If you go to the Big Island today, you can witness the extraordinary natural forces that created these islands as Kilauea volcano is continuing to erupt and lay down new land. And in this way, millions of years ago, volcanoes popped up and produced a string of islands, one by one, on the Pacific plate. And this string of islands was so far away from any other land, 2,000 miles from the nearest continent, it was the most isolated island archipelago in the world. It was incredibly, incredibly rare initially, before man, for any plant or animal to make it here. Only once every 50,000 years before man did a plant make it here. The first things were seeds and spores that blew in on the wind. The plants took root and began to break up the rock. And that combined with the wind and the rain turned the volcanic rock into soil. And then in an amazingly short period of time, just a few hundred years, we had lush rainforest all over our islands. And we still do in some of the upper latitudes on some of our islands like here on Maui. These were the most unique rainforests in the world because of our isolation. The insects, the plants, the birds, evolved uniquely here because of the isolation. In fact, we have the highest rate of endemism. It's a word scientists use. It means found here and only here. And these are, in a sense, the first Hawaiians. I mean, they were the first colonizers, and we're losing them. We're losing all of them dramatically to an invasion from the outside world of exotic species being brought in by man at thousands of times the natural rate. We have become the endangered species capital of the world. So there I go with the facts again. Now, in natural history filmmaking circles, there's a raging debate. There has been for years, and there still is. And as though a choice needs to be made, but all debates are like this. But the debate is, should we be making films about the lives of animals, the dramatic stories about lives of animals. These are called blue chip films, and a great example of it is the series Planet Earth. Or should we be making films which address directly our environmental problems? The thing is that the blue chip films get super high ratings. The environmental films, with their messages and with their intelligent and thoughtful talking heads, not nearly as talented as the ones we have here tonight, but they get really low ratings. It's just a fact on television. People don't want to hear about the problems necessarily. They don't want to be depressed. But I also argue that when we make those so-called environmental films, we're appealing to the wrong part of the brain, the rational side of the brain. We decided in our first National Geographic special, Hawaii Strangers in Paradise, that we would embrace emotionalism and dramatize eco-pioneers here in Hawaii as they struggle to save the wildlife. On the cliffs of Molokai, those treacherous cliffs of Molokai, a man scales these cliffs to try and help a native survivor. It's a plant called Brickhamia, and its native pollinator has either gone extinct or become so rare that now humans have to stand in and pollinate the plant. I just find this incredibly poetic. It's like one man desperately blowing to flame to keep the genetic fires alive of one species. Then we go from poetry to violence. The worst invader that we have in terms of rainforest is the feral pig, and we decided to film a pig hunt conducted by the National Park Service, where they track down and kill a wild boar with their dogs. Now, this is extremely dangerous and disturbing work, extremely controversial. There's a lot of hunters and there's a lot of animal rights activists who vehemently object to this. But in filmmaking, I think you have to appeal to the emotions, even if it means stirring up conflicting feelings. These animals, the damage that they create, this program is so necessary. We've heard a lot about watershed here tonight. A pig wallow in the forest becomes a breeding ground for avian malaria, which is wiping out native birds. At the same time, it starts the process of erosion with the soil flowing down our streams and our waterfalls, and that joining the runoff from agriculture until eventually it flows into our famous blue sea. So the fight to get rid of pigs is not just the fight to save the rainforest, it's the fight to save the whole system. And I just wanted to make a point about when we do something that's controversial and it riles some people up, it's important because that's the way, because it stimulates debate. And that's the way that we, through the heart, get to the rational side. Now, we hope that, that we can make a difference with these films. We never really know, but the late Senator Dan Inouye took this film, Strangers in Paradise, and he took it to Congress, and he apparently used it to drum up environmental support for Hawaii in the early 90s, and we were never sure what sort of impact that we might have, but we were hoping. But there was one time when we knew for sure. Now, stretching over 1,000 miles up to the northwest, beyond the main islands, is the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands. This is a chain of rarely seen tiny atolls and sand spits that stretch way, way, way up all the way to Kure Atoll. People rarely go here. Now, I had the pleasure of being on an expedition that went from Oahu up to Kure Atoll, a 3-month expedition. It was mounted and run by Michel Cousteau, the son of the legendary Jacques Cousteau. Like I said, people rarely get a chance to go up here. It was quite extraordinary. And we covered every single island and filmed on every single island. This place is inhabited almost exclusively by wildlife. There's very few people here, except us, and some scientists. And the wildlife shows no fear of people. There's extraordinary, there's 14 million birds that nest here, frigate birds and albatross. It's home to the endangered Hawaiian monk seal. It's a nesting ground for 90% of Hawaii's green sea turtles. Underwater, it's a diver's paradise. it has some of the most extensive and healthiest coral reefs in the world, in the entire planet. There are species found on these reefs of fish and corals and invertebrates that used to be common in the main islands and are not so common anymore. And here the reefs are just packed with this life. If you're a diver, you see these giant tabletop or cropper corals that used to be in the main islands, and they're all over the place. The most striking thing, though, was the preponderance of big predatory fish like jacks and sharks. There's so many that you just see hundreds of them when you jump in the water in most of these reefs. And at first we thought, this is bizarre. It's like the whole ecosystem is upside down. It's top heavy with predators. There's too many predators. But now we think that this is the way the system is supposed to look and did look before fishing pressure by man. So we now think that a pristine coral reef system has tons of sharks. It's a sign of health. But even here, this far away from civilization, no place is safe. And what are seabirds finding out at sea and bringing back to feed their chicks? Plastic. Lighters, toothbrushes, bottle caps, everything probably thrown in the water by ocean liners, everything a growing albatross chick needs, right? Underwater, we would find nets entangled on the reef. A little bit here, a little bit there. And the Cousteau team helped this volunteer team pull these nets up and remove them from the reef. And a clump here, a clump there, and we collected more and more of a pile. And in a 2-week period, we had collected a virtual mountain of nets and marine debris that were entangled in the corals. I don't know of anything that feels to me more tragic than in this pristine place, seeing this mountain of debris. Now, the Cousteau film did have an impact, and possibly I don't want to get political here, so possibly the unlikeliest of conservation heroes, George W. Bush, watched the film in the White House screening room, and then he came out and surprised even his own advisors by declaring the Northwestern Hawaiian Islands a national monument. So you can make a difference. Now, Hawaii is a special place, but the entire world is kind of in trouble. It's an island in trouble. And today we rank terrorism as a greater threat than global warming. Once again, the limbic system is taking over because it's not designed to deal with long-term threats, only immediate threats. And the threat of melting ice flows and looming superstorms just doesn't compare with terrorism. So I would like to move on now, though, to the next myth. If there's any animal that we love to love, it's the dolphin. So you're all going to applaud now. I mean, look at this animal performing for us. It's got to be our friend. Even with its mouth wide open, it's not quite the same impression as a shark. Let's see, there we go. Not quite the same impression as a shark, even it looks like it's smiling. We love to love animals that we can identify with, that we can empathize with, that we see ourselves reflected in them, and the dolphin's one of them. But that smile, watch out, because that's not a reflection of the dolphin's mood. That's a fixed anatomical feature. And when the dolphin's mood goes sour, watch out. It took us years filming to discover this. These are 600-pound male bottlenose in the Bahamas engaging in a fierce battle involving body blows that would put the NFL to shame. And ironically, the nastiest dolphin in the sea is the beloved bottlenose of Flipper Myth. These animals kidnap females for possession, and they battle, and they engage in inter-gang warfare over the possession of these females. It's a way of life in the sociality of this dolphin. In the crystal clear waters of the Bahamas, a sign of peace and serenity, a female with her calf, but a gang of males is after her. And she has to be very careful because they might attack her and they might kill her calf. In this case, she fights them off. Some dolphins are suspected, like lions, of infanticide, of killing calves before taking possession of females. We're not totally sure about that, but scientists do suspect it occurs. So what does this mean? Does it mean we shouldn't respect and love dolphins? Of course we should respect them, but it does actually, we have an even stronger affinity with them because, like us, they are intelligent, passionate, and they have a dark side. But what's the point of dispelling this myth? Well, is it bad for the dolphin? Is it bad for the ocean? Well, I think that when we take a wild animal and we reach out and we touch it and we want to embrace it and we want to feed it and we want to bring it into our world and have it performing for us like a circus pet, then maybe we're loving that animal too much. So this brings us back to the animal, the one animal that we love to hate. The shark is just not very lovable. It's hard to feel an affinity with the shark. We can't tell its different moods. We can't tell if it's happy or sad. We can't tell if it's suffering. It doesn't have a smile. Maybe what we need to do is to get out of the cage and find, and we have been doing this, find different ways of filming this animal to get away from shoving the camera in that mouth. I know that image gets high ratings, but maybe we need to show the poetry. Here's a two-man submarine that we used in Guadeloupe to follow the shark around, and the sharks love just to cruise parallel to it. And this way you don't have to attract them with bait to anything. You're just cruising in their world, and you get these nice poetic images of the shark swimming around. The first time I saw a great white shark, my very first experience with it, it swam up to me and it looked at me. And it looked at me not with soulless black eyes, but it looked at me with the perceptive eyes of an intelligent creature. And as it swam away and I was mesmerized by the dappling light on its back, I was transformed by this experience. And I hope I can't give you that experience, but we hope with the devil's teeth to be able to portray it with characters in a movie. Now, back to what I asked before, how can we get empathy for the white shark? I don't think just showing you beautiful poetic images is going to do it. I think that you're still going to be afraid of this animal. I was cruising internet the other day and I came across a video which frightened me more than anything, and I'm going to share it with you. I didn't film this, but I found this. The sound, please.
Just looping out.
See, I don't know what scares me the most, the cackling sounds of the fishermen off screen, or the beating of the animal with a baseball bat. The shark is alive. So, which animal is most dangerous? I mean, honestly, when is the last time a shark kidnapped a human being and took it down and tortured it? It just doesn't happen, does it? And I want to apologize to you for leaving you with this grotesque image, but I hope it has an emotional impact on you. Because if I can get you to empathize with an animal which is considered the scariest fish in the sea, then maybe anything is possible. Maybe one day you can be convinced that global warming is more of a threat than terrorism, and that all the animals on our planet, cute and uncute, smiling and unsmiling, deserve your respect. And if I can do that, maybe we're rational creatures after all. Thank you.